Marcus Rodriguez wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, stepping back to admire his work. The ancient washing machine hummed back to life, its owner, Mrs. Chen, beaming with relief. At 42, Marcus had built a reputation in the neighborhood as the man who could fix anything. His small repair shop on Maple Street might not look like much with its peeling paint and handwritten signs, but people came from miles around when their appliances gave up hope. "You're a miracle worker, Marcus," Mrs. Chen said, pressing a $20 bill into his calloused palm. "My daughter said I should just buy a new one, but this machine has been with me for 15 years. Marcus smiled, his weathered face crinkling at the corners. "Sometimes the old ones just need a little love and patience. They don't make them like this anymore." As Mrs. Chen left, Marcus glanced at the photo taped to his workbench. His 8-year-old daughter Sophia stared back at him, missing her 2 front teeth in a wide grin. 3 years had passed since Maria died in the car accident, leaving Marcus to raise Sophia alone. Every repair job, every late night in the shop was for her future. College funds didn't build themselves, and Marcus knew his daughter deserved better than the hand-to-mouth existence they currently lived. The bell above his shop door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see an unusual sight. A woman in an expensive black suit stood in his doorway, looking completely out of place among the broken toasters and vacuum cleaners. Her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't have a strand out of place, and her shoes probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. "Are you Marcus Rodriguez?" she asked, her voice crisp and professional. "That's me. What can I fix for you today?" Marcus wiped his hands again, suddenly aware of his grease-stained work shirt. The woman stepped forward, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, personal assistant to Victoria Sterling. Perhaps you've heard of her?" Marcus had indeed heard of Victoria Sterling. Everyone in the city knew about the tech billionaire who had built her empire from nothing. Her face graced magazine covers, and her company's logo was on half the electronics in his shop. But what was her assistant doing in his humble repair shop? "Ms. Sterling has a problem that requires your particular expertise," Jennifer continued. "She's heard about your reputation for fixing things others consider impossible." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I mostly work on appliances and electronics. I'm not sure what I could do for someone like her that her money couldn't already buy." Jennifer's professional smile faltered slightly. "This isn't about money, Mr. Rodriguez. It's about something money can't fix. Ms. Sterling would like to meet with you personally. She's prepared to pay you very well for a consultation." "Look, lady, I appreciate the offer, but I've got work to do. Mrs. Patterson's refrigerator is acting up, and the Johnsons need their TV fixed before the big game tonight." Marcus turned back to his workbench, uncomfortable with the whole situation. $100,000, Jennifer said quietly. Marcus froze, his screwdriver halfway to a circuit board. He turned slowly. "What did you say?" $100,000 for a consultation, just to hear her out. If you can help her, there would be much more. Marcus's mind raced. That amount of money would secure Sophia's college fund completely. He could even expand the shop, maybe hire someone to help. But what could a billionaire possibly need from him? "What's wrong with her?" he asked. Jennifer hesitated. "That's not for me to say. Will you meet with her?" That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table helping Sophia with her homework. Math problems filled her notebook, and she chewed her pencil thoughtfully. The modest apartment above his shop was home, but he couldn't help thinking about Jennifer's offer. $100,000 was more money than he'd ever dreamed of having. "Daddy, you're being quiet," Sophia observed, looking up from her multiplication tables. "Just thinking, mija," Marcus replied, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "How was school today?" "Good. Tommy Peterson said his dad makes lots of money at his job downtown. He has a big house and a swimming pool." Sophia's voice held a wistful note. "Do you think we'll ever have a swimming pool?" Marcus's heart tightened. "Pools are nice, but they're not everything. We have each other, and that's worth more than any pool." Sophia nodded, but Marcus saw the longing in her eyes. He'd tried to give her everything she needed, but kids noticed differences. They saw designer clothes and fancy gadgets while Sophia wore thrift store finds and played with toys from garage sales. The next morning, Marcus called the number on Jennifer's business card. Within an hour, a black sedan pulled up outside his shop. The driver, dressed as formally as Jennifer, held the door open for him. The Sterling Tower dominated the city skyline, its glass and steel facade reflecting the morning sun. Marcus had seen it countless times but never imagined he'd be inside. The elevator carried him to the top floor, where Jennifer waited to escort him down a hallway, lined with expensive artwork. "Miss Sterling is in her office," Jennifer said, stopping, before imposing double doors. "She's been looking forward to meeting you." Marcus straightened his best shirt, suddenly feeling inadequate despite his efforts to dress nicely. The doors opened to reveal an office larger than his entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and modern furniture arranged precisely throughout the space. Behind an enormous desk sat Victoria Sterling herself. At 35, she was younger than he'd expected, with sharp green eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her business suit was impeccable, but there was something about her posture, something in her eyes that suggested vulnerability beneath the polished exterior. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said, rising to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Marcus settled into a leather chair that probably cost more than his truck. "Your assistant mentioned you needed something fixed. I have to admit, I'm curious what someone like you would need from someone like me." Victoria's composed mask slipped for just a moment, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something raw and desperate in her expression. She moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "Tell me, Mr. Rodriguez, what's the most difficult thing you've ever repaired?" Marcus considered Victoria's question carefully. "A few years back, Mrs. Kowalski brought me her husband's watch. It had belonged to his father, and his father before that. The mechanism was so old and damaged that 3 other repair shops told her it was hopeless. But it wasn't really about the watch, you know? It was about keeping a connection to someone she'd lost." Victoria nodded slowly, still facing the window. "And did you fix it?" "Took me 6 weeks and parts I had to machine myself, but yes." The look on her face when it started ticking again. Marcus smiled at the memory. "That's why I do what I do. It's not about the machines. It's about what they mean to people." Victoria turned back to him, and Marcus saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "I built my company from nothing, Mr. Rodriguez. Started in my garage with borrowed money and an idea that everyone said would fail. I've created technologies that have changed how the world communicates, employs thousands of people, donated millions to charity." Her voice grew quieter. "But I can't fix the one thing that matters most." She moved to her desk and pulled out a framed photograph. With trembling hands, she passed it to Marcus. The image showed a younger Victoria laughing with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. The child had Victoria's green eyes and a radiant smile. "Her name is Emma," Victoria whispered. "She's my daughter." Marcus studied the photo. "She's beautiful. Where is she now?" Victoria's composure finally cracked. She sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. "That's just it. I don't know. She's with my ex-husband David somewhere, and I haven't seen her in 8 months. The story poured out of Victoria in broken fragments. She'd married David Sterling, a charming investment banker, when her company was just taking off. Emma had been the light of their lives, but as Victoria's business grew, the demands increased. 18-hour days became normal. Business trips stretched into weeks. She missed Emma's first steps, her first words, countless bedtime stories. "David said I loved my company more than my family," Victoria continued, her voice barely audible. "Maybe he was right. I thought I was building something for Emma's future, but I was missing her present." The divorce had been brutal and public. David had painted Victoria as a workaholic mother who put business before her child. Despite her wealth and legal team, the judge had awarded him primary custody, citing Victoria's demanding schedule and frequent travel. "I was supposed to have Emma every other weekend and holidays," Victoria explained. "But 6 months after the divorce was final, David disappeared. He liquidated his accounts, quit his job, and vanished with Emma. The police say it's a civil matter. Private investigators have found nothing. My money, my connections, my technology empire, none of it matters. I can't find my little girl. Marcus felt his heart break for this powerful woman who seemed so small and broken in her expensive chair. Have you tried everything? FBI? International investigators? Everything, Victoria confirmed. I've spent millions searching for them. I've had teams combing through financial records, checking border crossings, monitoring social media. David was smart. He planned this for months, maybe years. He knows how to stay hidden. She stood again, walking to a different wall where architectural plans were displayed. I've even bought properties in every state where I thought they might be hiding, thinking if I owned enough real estate I'd eventually find them. Nothing works. Marcus set down the photograph gently. Ms. Sterling, I fix broken appliances. I don't understand why you think I can help with this. Victoria returned to her desk and pulled out a thick folder. Because you fix things others can't. You see solutions where experts see only problems. Jennifer spent weeks researching you. Mr. Rodriguez. Every person we interviewed said the same thing. You don't just repair machines, you understand what people really need. She opened the folder, revealing newspaper clippings, testimonials, and photos of Marcus with grateful customers. Mrs. Patterson's refrigerator that kept breaking down. You discovered her late husband had modified it years ago as a surprise, and you preserved his work while making it functional. The school's PA system that 3 technicians couldn't repair? You realized it wasn't broken at all, just installed wrong by someone who didn't understand the building's acoustics. Marcus was amazed at the depth of research. You've been watching me? Investigating, Victoria corrected. I needed to know if you were someone I could trust with the most important thing in my life. You see connections others miss. You understand that sometimes the problem isn't what everyone thinks it is. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. I've been approaching this search like a business problem, throwing money and technology at it, hiring experts who think like I do. But maybe I need someone who thinks differently, someone who understands what really matters. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I'm flattered, but missing persons cases require experience I don't have. I wouldn't know where to start. But you do know how to listen, Victoria said urgently. How to look at a problem from all angles. How to understand what someone really needs, not just what they say they want. She paused. And you're a father. You understand what Emma means to me in a way the professionals don't. The mention of fatherhood hit Marcus deeply. He thought of Sophia downstairs in the shop, probably helping Mrs. Patterson organize the spare parts like she did every afternoon after school. The idea of losing her, of not knowing where she was or if she was safe, made his chest tighten with panic. What exactly are you asking me to do? He asked quietly. Victoria pulled out another file, thicker than the first. Work with me. Look at everything my investigators have found with fresh eyes. Help me think like David instead of like a CEO hunting him down. You know what it means to lose someone you love and still keep going. You understand both sides of this. Marcus remembered Maria's funeral, the devastating loneliness, the fear of failing Sophia as a single parent. It's not the same situation. Isn't it? Victoria interrupted. You lost your wife and had to rebuild your life around being the parent Emma needs. David lost the family he thought he had and took drastic action to protect what mattered to him. The investigators see him as a criminal. I see him as a selfish monster who stole my daughter, but maybe you could see him as a desperate father who made a terrible choice. The room fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning and distant city traffic. Marcus looked again at the photo of Emma, seeing Sophia's innocence reflected in those green eyes. Every child deserved to be safe and loved, but they also deserve to know both their parents when possible. If I help you, Marcus said slowly, it can't be about winning or losing. It has to be about what's best for Emma. Victoria nodded immediately. Of course, I want my daughter back, but I want her happy and healthy more than anything. And if we find them, if David has reasons for running that make sense, you have to be willing to listen. Really listen. Victoria hesitated, clearly struggling with the idea. Finally, she nodded. I'll try. I just want to see my daughter again. Mr. Rodriguez, I want to tell her I'm sorry and that I love her more than any business or success. Marcus stood up, making his decision. Call me Marcus, and we're going to start from the beginning. Everything the investigators told you, everything, they concluded. We're going to forget it all and look at this like a father who's trying to understand another father. Marcus spent the next 3 days reading through Victoria's files in a conference room she'd set aside for their investigation. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming. Private detectives had generated hundreds of reports, tracking everything, from David's credit history to his childhood friends. Financial experts had analyzed every transaction, looking for patterns. Tech specialists had monitored digital footprints that led nowhere. This is the problem, Marcus told Victoria on Thursday morning, pushing away a stack of surveillance photos. Everyone's been hunting David like he's a criminal on the run. But what if he's just a father trying to protect his daughter? Victoria frowned. Protect her from what? I never heard Emma. Marcus chose his words carefully. Sometimes protection isn't about physical harm. Tell me about David's childhood. Victoria pulled out another file. Normal middle-class family. His parents divorced when he was 12. He lived with his father mostly, saw his mother every other weekend. Just like Emma was supposed to live with you, Marcus observed. How did David feel about that arrangement growing up? I never really asked. Victoria's voice grew smaller. He mentioned once that he felt like his mother became a stranger to him, that the divorce turned his parents into these formal, polite people who communicated through lawyers. Marcus nodded. So when your divorce started following the same pattern, when Emma was going to live the same life he did, how do you think that felt? Victoria was quiet for a long time. Terrifying, like history repeating itself. They spent the morning reconstructing David's perspective instead of hunting him like a fugitive. Marcus had Victoria tell him about their marriage, but he asked different questions than the investigators had. Not where David might run, but why he'd felt running was his only choice. He used to say I was becoming someone he didn't recognize, Victoria admitted. That the woman he married wouldn't miss Emma's birthday for a board meeting. Did you miss her birthday? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. It was the Tokyo expansion deal. David said he'd handle the party, that we could celebrate when I got back. But Emma cried when I called to wish her happy birthday. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Marcus felt the familiar pang of single parenthood. After Maria died, I used to work late because it was easier than going home to an empty house. I told myself I was building security for Sophia, but really I was just avoiding the pain. Is that what you were doing? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Maybe. Work was the one place I still felt in control, where I could solve problems and see results. At home, I felt like I was failing everyone. By afternoon, they had a new theory. Instead of viewing David as a kidnapper, they began seeing him as a father who'd watched his ex-wife disappear into her empire and feared Emma would grow up feeling abandoned like he had. The investigators focused on finding him, Marcus said. But we need to understand him. What would David need to feel safe bringing Emma back? They started looking at the case files differently. Instead of hunting for hiding places, they looked for patterns that revealed David's state of mind. Marcus noticed something the professionals had dismissed. Look at these credit card charges from before he disappeared, Marcus said, spreading receipts across the table. Children's books, art supplies, educational toys. He's not just hiding with Emma. He's trying to be the parent he thinks she needs. Victoria studied the receipts. He bought her a complete set of science experiment kits. She always loved those. Because you used to do experiments with her? When she was little, yes, before the company grew so big. Victoria's voice carried regret. We'd make volcanoes in the kitchen and grow crystals on the windowsill. David used to joke that we'd destroy the house with our projects. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his shop. Sophia? Hi, Mija. Listen, If Daddy had to go away for a while to keep you safe, where would you want to go? He listened to his daughter's response, nodding. Somewhere with animals and space to play outside. Somewhere that felt like an adventure, not like hiding. Thanks, sweetheart, I'll see you tonight. David's not in a city, Marcus told Victoria after hanging up. Kids don't dream about hiding in apartments. Emma would want space, animals, maybe a place where she could explore. Look for rural areas, small towns, maybe farm country. They began mapping David's life before the marriage, looking for places that held positive memories. Victoria remembered him talking fondly about summers spent at his uncle's farm in Montana, but investigators had already checked there. Marcus suggested they look broader. People return to feelings, not just places, he explained. Where else might David have felt that same kind of peace and freedom? Victoria pulled up real estate records on her computer. He looked at properties online sometimes. I thought it was just daydreaming, but maybe he was planning. She paused, typing rapidly. Here, he bookmarked several listings in Oregon, Colorado, and Vermont. Small towns, houses with land. Marcus studied the listings. One caught his attention immediately. This one in Colorado, Willowbrook, population 847. Look at the house description, Victoria read aloud. 4 bedrooms, 2 acres, adjacent to horse ranch, perfect for families seeking quiet country life. Her breath caught. Emma loves horses. We used to drive past the stables on Riverside Drive and she'd beg to stop and watch them. They spent the evening researching Willowbrook, Colorado. It was exactly the kind of place a father might choose to give his daughter a different kind of childhood. Small enough that everyone knew each other, safe enough that kids could play, outside unsupervised, close enough to nature that Emma could have the adventures Victoria's busy schedule had never allowed. There's something else, Marcus said, studying the town's website. They have a community center that offers after-school programs, art classes, science clubs, horseback riding lessons. David could give Emma all the activities she missed while still being present for them. Victoria stared at the computer screen, tears streaming down her face. He's trying to be the parent I never was. The next morning, they flew to Colorado. Victoria wanted to bring her security team and lawyers, but Marcus convinced her to go alone with him. If we're right, David's been watching for exactly that kind of approach. He'll disappear again if he feels threatened. Willowbrook was everything they'd imagined. Rolling hills dotted with horses, a main street that looked like something from a movie, children riding bikes without helmets while parents watched from front porches. It was the childhood Victoria's corporate empire had never allowed Emma to have. They rented a car and drove slowly through the town looking for signs of David and Emma. Marcus had convinced Victoria to let him take the lead. His approach would be less threatening than her usual corporate tactics. At the local diner, Marcus struck up a conversation with the waitress. Beautiful town. My friend and I are thinking about relocating somewhere quieter for our kids. You get many new families moving in? The waitress, whose name tag read Betty, smiled warmly. A few. Had a nice man and his little girl move here about 6 months ago. Dave and Emily. Sweet as pie, both of them. He works part-time at the hardware store. She's in 2nd grade at the elementary school. Victoria gripped Marcus's arm under the table, but he continued casually. Sounds nice. Kids need stability. His wife worked too? Betty's expression grew slightly protective. He's raising Emily on his own, doing a fine job of it too. That little girl's always smiling, always polite. You can tell he puts her first in everything. After paying for lunch, they sat in the car outside the diner. Victoria was shaking. That's them, Dave and Emily. He changed their names just enough to feel safe but not enough to confuse Emma. Marcus nodded. Now comes the hard part. We need to approach this carefully. David's been running for 8 months because he believes he's protecting Emma. If we corner him, he'll run again. I just want to see her, Victoria whispered. I just want to know she's okay. She is okay, Marcus said gently. That waitress described a happy, well-adjusted child. David's not the monster your lawyers painted him as. He's a father who made a desperate choice because he was afraid of losing his daughter the way he lost his mother. They spent the afternoon observing the town from a distance, getting a feel for the rhythm of life there. At 3:30, Children began walking home from the elementary school. Victoria tensed as a small figure with familiar green eyes and auburn hair came into view, walking hand in hand with a tall man whose face had grown a beard since his corporate photos. Emma looked healthy and happy, chattering excitedly to David about something that had happened at school. She wore jeans and a t-shirt instead of the designer clothes Victoria had always dressed her in, and her hair was in simple braids rather than the elaborate styles Victoria's nanny had preferred. "She's beautiful," Victoria breathed. "She's grown so much." Marcus watched the interaction between father and daughter. David listened intently to Emma's story, asking questions and laughing at her responses. When they reached a small blue house with a white picket fence, Emma ran ahead to pet a golden retriever that bounded off the porch to greet them. "He got her a dog," Victoria said, tears flowing freely now. "He gave her the childhood you were too busy to provide," Marcus said quietly. "The question is, what are you going to do about that?" Victoria wanted to run to the house immediately, to sweep Emma into her arms and never let go. But Marcus held her back, his calloused hand gentle but firm on her arm. "If you go to that house now, what happens?" he asked. "David sees you and panics. Maybe he runs again. Maybe he calls the police claiming you're violating custody orders." Emma gets confused and scared. "Is that what you want her to remember about seeing her mother again?" Victoria slumped in the passenger seat, her designer suit wrinkled from the long day. "Then what do I do? I can't just watch from a distance forever." Marcus studied the peaceful scene. David was now helping Emma with what looked like a science project on the front porch, the golden retriever sprawled at their feet. It was the picture of domestic tranquility that Victoria's high-powered lifestyle had never allowed. "We need David to want to talk to you," Marcus said finally. "Right now you're the enemy in his story, the workaholic mother who abandoned her family for corporate success. We need to change that narrative." They checked into the town's only motel, a quaint place called the Pine Rest Inn. Marcus suggested they stay for several days, not to stalk David and Emma, but to understand their new life. Victoria agreed reluctantly, her instinct telling her to take immediate action. The next morning, Marcus went to the hardware store alone while Victoria waited at the motel. He needed to assess David's state of mind without the complication of Victoria's presence. The store was exactly what Marcus expected from a small town, organized chaos, with helpful staff who knew every customer by name. David stood behind the counter, helping an elderly farmer select the right screws for a gate repair. He looked different from his corporate photos, more relaxed despite the obvious stress lines around his eyes. Marcus browsed the electrical section, listening to David interact with customers. He was patient and knowledgeable, taking time to understand each person's needs rather than rushing them toward a purchase. When the store quieted, Marcus approached the counter with a simple door handle. "New. In town?" David asked, scanning the barcode. "Just visiting. Friend and I are thinking about relocating somewhere quieter. You like it here?" David's expression became cautious, the wariness Marcus expected from someone living under a false identity. "It's a good place to raise kids. Safe, friendly. People look out for each other." Marcus paid for the door handle he didn't need. "That matters. I've got a daughter myself, 8 years old. Lost her mom a few years back, so it's just the two of us." Something shifted in David's face, recognition of shared experience. "I'm sorry. That must be hard." "Every day," Marcus admitted honestly. "But kids are resilient. Give them love and stability, and they find ways to be happy. Your daughter seems happy. Saw her walking home from school yesterday." David tensed immediately. "You were watching my daughter?" Marcus raised his hands peacefully. "Not watching, just happened to notice. Hard to miss a kid that full of joy. You're doing something right." The compliment seemed to catch David off guard. After months of feeling like a fugitive, hearing praise for his parenting was clearly unexpected. She's everything to me," David said quietly. "Shows," Marcus replied. "Takes a special kind of father to put his child's needs ahead of his own comfort." Over the next few days, Marcus established a careful routine. Morning coffee at the diner, afternoon visit to the hardware store, evening walks around town. He never pushed for personal information, never asked probing questions. Instead, he shared his own story, the single father struggling to balance work and parenthood, the fear of not being enough for his daughter. David began to warm to him, recognizing a kindred spirit. They talked about the challenges of homework, help, the worry about whether they were making the right choices, the exhausting job of being both mother and father to their children. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish," David admitted on Thursday afternoon, when the store was empty, taking Emily away from everything she knew. But her mother, she was never really there anyway. Always traveling, always in meetings. Emily used to wait by the window for hours, hoping she'd come home early. Marcus felt his chest tighten at the pain in David's voice. "Kids need presence more than presents. Sounds like you're giving her something precious, your attention." "I try. But I know I'm not enough. She needs art classes and music lessons and all the opportunities her mother could provide. Here she just has me and whatever this little town offers." "Maybe that's exactly what she needs," Marcus suggested. "My daughter goes to a fancy private school on scholarship, has every opportunity money can buy. But you know what she treasures most? The nights we work together in my shop, just the two of us figuring out how to fix something broken." David nodded thoughtfully. "Emily loves our Saturday morning experiments. We're building a robot from a kit I found online. Nothing fancy, but she acts like we're creating the most amazing thing in the world. Because to her you are. The time you spend together, the attention you give her, that's worth more than any expensive program." Meanwhile, Victoria was struggling with her own revelations. Staying in the small town forced her to confront the life she'd missed. She watched other families at the diner, parents who actually listened when their children talked, who weren't constantly checking phones or scheduling the next meeting. "I don't know how to be the mother Emma needs," she confided to Marcus that evening. "I spent so many years believing that providing for her meant building the company bigger, earning more money, creating a legacy. But I missed her childhood while I was building her future." Marcus looked up from his own phone, where he'd been texting with Sophia about her day at school. "It's not too late. Emma's only 5 years old. There's still time to learn how to be present. What if David won't let me try? What if he's right to protect her from me?" "Then you prove him wrong. You show him that you've changed, that you understand what Emma really needs." On Friday, Marcus made his move. David was alone in the hardware store doing inventory after hours. Marcus knocked on the glass door and David looked up, debating whether to let him in. "I know who you are," Marcus said, when David opened the door. "And I know who sent me." David's face went white. He stepped backward, his hand moving toward the phone. "I don't know what you're talking about." David Sterling, formerly of Chicago, Emma's father, Victoria's ex-husband. Marcus kept his voice calm and non-threatening. "She hired me to find you, and I did, but not for the reasons you think. You're here to take Emma back to her." David's voice was barely controlled panic. "I'm here because a mother is heartbroken and a father is scared, and a little girl is caught in the middle." Marcus moved slowly into the store, his hands visible and empty. "Victoria doesn't want to take Emma away from the life you've built here. She wants to understand it." David laughed bitterly. "Right. The great Victoria Sterling wants to understand small-town life. She'll be back on her private jet within hours, taking Emma to some boarding school where she'll get the best education money can buy, while never seeing her mother." "That's what the old Victoria might have done," Marcus agreed. "But losing Emma broke something in her. She spent 8 months realizing that all her success means nothing without her daughter. She had her chance. She chose her company over her family every single time." Marcus nodded. "You're right. She did. And now she knows it was the worst mistake of her life. The question is, are you willing to let her try to fix it?" David stared at him for a long moment. "Who are you, really? You're not a private investigator." "I fix things for a living. Broken appliances, mostly. But Victoria hired me because she thought maybe I could fix something more important. A broken family. Some things can't be fixed." Marcus thought of his own losses, his own struggles. Maybe not, but maybe they can be rebuilt into something different, something better. David was quiet for several minutes, processing everything. Finally, he asked, "What does she want? To see Emma? To apologize? To prove that she's learned what really matters?" Marcus paused. "And to let Emma decide what happens next. Emma's 5 years old. She can't make decisions about custody arrangements. No, but she can decide whether she wants to know her mother, whether she wants Victoria to be part of her life in some way." Marcus met David's eyes. "You gave Emma a beautiful childhood here, but you also took away her choice about knowing her mother. Don't you think she deserves that choice?" David Sterling sat heavily on a stool behind the hardware store counter, his hands shaking as he processed Marcus's words. For 8 months, he'd lived with the constant fear of discovery, the weight of his decision, and the loneliness of carrying it all alone. "She really changed?" he asked quietly. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed David a video Victoria had recorded that morning. In it, she sat on the motel bed, makeup-free and vulnerable in a way her corporate image never allowed. "Emma, if you're watching this, I want you to know that Mommy is sorry," Victoria's voice said from the small screen. "I made mistakes. Big ones. I thought being a good mother meant working hard to give you everything money could buy. But I forgot to give you the most important thing, me. Daddy was right to protect you from that version of me. But I'm learning to be different now. I'm learning what really matters." David watched the entire 3-minute message, seeing genuine remorse in Victoria's eyes. When it ended, he handed the phone back to Marcus with tears in his own eyes. 8 months ago, she would never have admitted she was wrong about anything, David said softly. "The Victoria I married believed her way was always the right way, that working harder and earning more would solve every problem." "People can change when they lose what matters most," Marcus replied. "I learned that when my wife died. All my priorities shifted overnight. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us who we really want to be." David stood and paced to the window, looking out at the quiet main street of Willowbrook. A few streetlights illuminated the peaceful scene, so different from the busy Chicago life they'd left behind. "Emma asks about her mother sometimes," he admitted. "I've been telling her that. Mommy is working far away, that she loves Emma but can't visit right now. I didn't know what else to say." "What would you like to tell her?" David was quiet for a long time. "The truth, I suppose. That her parents made mistakes, that we both love her very much, and that we're trying to figure out how to be a family even though we're not married anymore." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "That sounds like a conversation worth having." They agreed to meet the next morning at the town park, a neutral location where Emma often played on weekends. David would bring Emma, and Victoria would have a chance to see her daughter for the first time in 8 months. No lawyers, no custody papers, just 2 parents and their child trying to find a way forward. That night, Marcus called Sophia from his motel room. "Hi, Mika. How was your day?" "Good, Daddy. Mrs. Patterson taught me how to organize the spare parts by size. When are you coming home?" Marcus smiled at his daughter's voice, missing her terribly. "Soon, sweetheart. I'm helping someone fix something very important." "Like a washing machine? Like a family?" Sophia was quiet for a moment. "That sounds harder than a washing machine." "Much harder," Marcus agreed. "But just as important." Meanwhile, Victoria sat in her motel room, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Without her usual business attire and perfectly styled hair, she looked younger, more vulnerable. She'd never appeared in public looking so ordinary, but somehow it felt more honest than the polished image she'd cultivated for years. She thought about Emma's new life in Willowbrook, the simple house with the dog, the small-town school where teachers knew every student's name, the father who was present for every moment. It was everything Victoria's childhood had lacked, everything she'd failed to give Emma in their old life. Her phone rang, displaying her assistant Jennifer's number. Victoria hesitated, then answered. "Victoria. Thank goodness." Jennifer's voice. was tense with worry. The Tokyo deal is falling apart without you. The board is demanding answers about your absence. When are you coming back? Victoria looked out her motel window at the star-filled sky, so much clearer than the city sky she was used to. I don't know, Jennifer. What do you mean you don't know? You have 17 meetings scheduled for next week. The pharmaceutical merger requires your signature by Wednesday. Reschedule them. Reschedule them? Jennifer's voice rose in disbelief. Victoria, these are multi-billion-dollar deals. You can't just reschedule them. Victoria felt the familiar pull of her corporate responsibilities, the adrenaline rush of high-stakes negotiations and world-changing decisions. For a moment, she wavered. Then she thought of Emma's bright green eyes in that photograph. Of 8 months of missed bedtime stories and scraped knees she hadn't kissed better. Find someone else to handle them, Jennifer. Train someone, delegate authority, I don't care. But I'm not coming back until I fix what's truly broken. After hanging up, Victoria spent hours walking around the small town, thinking about the life she'd built and the life she'd lost. She passed the elementary school where Emma learned and laughed with new friends, the library where she probably checked out books about horses and science experiments, the ice cream shop where she and David might share Sundays on warm afternoons. Saturday. Morning arrived gray and drizzly. Typical spring weather in the mountains. Victoria dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. Clothes she'd bought at the local general store because her usual wardrobe seemed absurdly formal for a playground meeting. Marcus found her sitting on a bench near the swing set, arriving early, and looking terrified. Remember, he said gently, this isn't about winning or losing custody. It's about Emma getting to know her mother. What if she doesn't remember me? What if she doesn't want to see me? Then you'll deal with that honestly and keep trying. Children are forgiving when they see genuine love and effort. At exactly 10 o'clock, David appeared at the edge of the park, holding Emma's hand. The little girl wore a purple jacket and rain boots, her hair in the simple braids Victoria had noticed before. She was chattering excitedly about something, and David was listening with the patient attention Victoria remembered from their early marriage. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. Emma had grown so much in 8 months, her face losing some of its baby roundness, her legs longer beneath her little jeans. She was beautiful and healthy and happy, everything a mother could want for her child. Daddy, can I go swing? Emma asked, tugging toward the playground equipment. In a minute, sweetheart. There's someone here who wants to meet you. Emma looked around curiously and spotted Victoria on the bench. Her green eyes widened with a recognition that went deeper than memory. The instinctive knowledge of a child. Seeing her mother, is that... Emma's voice was barely a whisper. David knelt down to Emma's level, his voice gentle but honest. That's your mommy, Emma. She came a very long way to see you. Emma stared at Victoria for a long moment, processing this information. Then, to everyone's surprise, she broke free from David's hand and ran straight to the bench, throwing her small arms around Victoria's waist. Mommy, Emma cried, her voice muffled against Victoria's sweater. I missed you so much. Victoria broke down completely, holding her daughter and sobbing with relief and joy and 8 months of pent-up grief. I missed you too, baby girl. More than you could ever know. Marcus stepped back to give them space, and David approached slowly, his own eyes wet with tears. For several minutes they simply held each other, mother and daughter reunited after what felt like a lifetime apart. Where have you been, Mommy? Emma asked, pulling back to look at Victoria's face. Daddy said you were working far away. Victoria looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. I was working, sweetheart. Too much working. I forgot that the most important job I have is being your mommy. Emma considered this seriously. Are you done working now? Victoria laughed through her tears. Not completely done. But I'm learning how to work less and play more. Would you like to teach me? Emma's face lit up with excitement. I can show you my robot, and my school, and Buddy. She turned to David. Can Mommy meet Buddy, Daddy? David smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression Marcus had seen from him. I think Buddy would like that very much. The next 2 weeks changed everything for all of them. Victoria extended her stay in Willowbrook indefinitely, moving from the motel to a small rental cottage on the edge of town. She'd never lived anywhere so modest, but the little house with its creaky floors and outdated kitchen felt more like home than her Manhattan penthouse ever had. Emma visited every afternoon after school, showing Victoria her world with the boundless enthusiasm only a 5-year-old could muster. They built the robot David had mentioned, conducted science experiments that left the kitchen sink stained with food coloring, and read storybooks on the porch swing while Buddy the golden retriever dozed at their feet. "Look, Mommy," Emma said, one afternoon, pulling Victoria toward a patch of dirt behind the cottage. "We can plant a garden here. Daddy showed me how to grow tomatoes at our house." Victoria knelt in the soil, her expensive manicure quickly becoming a casualty of Emma's gardening enthusiasm. "What else should we plant? Flowers for the butterflies and herbs for cooking. Daddy says fresh basil makes everything taste better." As they worked side by side, Victoria realized she was learning more than gardening. She was learning patience, presence, and the simple joy of being completely focused on one person's happiness. Her phone sat silent in the house, her corporate empire running without her constant oversight for the first time in years. Marcus watched the family's progress from his unique position as both outsider and facilitator. He met regularly with David and Victoria separately, helping them navigate the complex emotions and practical concerns of rebuilding their relationship as co-parents. "I never thought I'd say this," David told him one evening at the hardware store, "but I think Victoria really has changed. She spent 3 hours yesterday helping Emma make a castle out of cardboard boxes. The old Victoria would have bought the most expensive playhouse she could find and had someone else assemble it." Marcus nodded. "Sometimes losing everything teaches us what we actually need." Victoria was having her own revelations. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she confessed to Marcus over coffee at the diner, "for the moment when I'll be desperate to get back to my real life. But I wake up every morning excited to see Emma, to hear about her day, to just be with her. I never felt that way about board meetings." "What happens when this honeymoon period ends?" Marcus asked gently. "When Emma has a tantrum, or gets sick, or you have to handle the boring parts of parenting?" Victoria had considered this. "Then, I'll learn to handle those parts too. I'll make mistakes, probably lots of them, but I'll be there to make them, which is more than I can say for the past few years." The real test came on a Tuesday when Emma came down with a stomach bug. Victoria had never dealt with a sick child alone. Nannies had always handled such crises in their old life. But when David called to say Emma was asking for her mommy, Victoria dropped everything and rushed to their house. She spent the day holding Emma while she felt miserable, cleaning up when the little girl couldn't make it to the bathroom in time, and learning to take a temperature with an old-fashioned thermometer. It was exhausting, gross, and completely unglamorous. Victoria loved every minute of it. "You're a good mommy," Emma mumbled against Victoria's shoulder during one of her brief lucid moments. "I'm learning to be," Victoria replied, smoothing Emma's damp hair. David found them asleep together on the couch that evening, Emma curled against Victoria's chest like she'd never left. The sight brought tears to his eyes, not from sadness but from relief. His daughter had her mother back, truly back. As Emma recovered, the three of them began having difficult but necessary conversations about the future. Marcus facilitated many of these discussions, helping them focus on Emma's needs rather than their own hurt feelings. "I can't move back to Chicago," Victoria said during one such conversation. "I've seen what that environment does to me, how it pulls me away from what matters. But I also can't expect you to stay here forever, David. You gave up your career to give Emma this life." David looked around the small blue house that had become their sanctuary. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. Tom Hartwell, who owns the hardware store, wants to retire. He's offered to sell me the business." Victoria's eyes widened. "You want to stay in Willowbrook?" "Emma's happy here. She has friends, a school she loves, a community that knows her name. Why would I take her away from that?" "But your career in investment banking," David laughed, "made me miserable for years. I was good at it, but I never loved it. Here, I help people fix their problems every day. I come home for lunch. I never miss Emma's school events. This is the life I want. They worked out an arrangement that nobody's lawyers would have recommended, but that felt right for their unique situation. Victoria bought a permanent home in Willowbrook, splitting her time between the small town and necessary business trips. She restructured her company's leadership, delegating more authority and refusing to take meetings during Emma's waking hours. "The board thinks I've lost my mind," she told Marcus during one of their last conversations before he returned home. "My productivity metrics are terrible by corporate standards." "How do you measure success now?" Marcus asked. Victoria smiled, watching through the window as Emma and David played fetch with Buddy in the yard. "Emma asked me yesterday if I could come to her school's science fair next month. When I said yes, she hugged me and said I was the best mommy in the world. That felt like the biggest deal I've ever closed." Marcus prepared to return to his own life and daughter, but not before one final conversation with Victoria. They sat on her cottage porch as the sun set over the mountains, the peaceful quiet of small-town evenings settling around them. "I need to ask you something," Victoria said. "What you've done for us, bringing our family back together, it's priceless. The $100,000 was just a consultation fee. What would it take for you to move here permanently? To be part of Emma's life, maybe help other families the way you helped us?" Marcus was touched but shook his head. "This is your journey now. You don't need me to fix anything else. Besides, Sophia needs me back home. She's got her own community, her own life. What if I invested in your repair shop, helped you expand it into something bigger?" "The shop isn't about getting bigger," Marcus replied gently. "It's about being useful to people who need help, just like what we did here." Victoria nodded, understanding finally that some things couldn't be improved with money or expansion. "Will you visit? Bring Sophia sometime? Emma would love to meet her." "I'd like that." As Marcus packed his simple duffel bag the next morning, he reflected on the unusual case that had brought him to Willowbrook. He'd come to help a billionaire find her missing daughter, but he'd ended up helping a broken family learn to be whole again. Victoria had indeed been right that Marcus could fix things others couldn't repair, but not because he had special technical skills or investigative abilities. He'd succeeded because he understood that the most important repairs weren't about machinery or systems. They were about human hearts. The drive back to his own life gave Marcus time to think about his own priorities. He'd helped Victoria learn to balance ambition with presence, but was he applying those lessons to his own relationship with Sophia? He made a mental note to spend less time in the shop and more time helping with homework, to say yes more often, when Sophia asked him to read another bedtime story. When he finally pulled up outside his modest repair shop on Maple Street, Sophia burst through the door and ran into his arms. "Daddy, you're home. Did you fix the broken family?" Marcus hugged his daughter tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo and the comforting sounds of his neighborhood. "We fixed each other, mija. Sometimes that's how it works." "What do you mean?" Marcus looked at his shop, his home, his life that seemed so small compared to Victoria's empire, but felt perfectly sized for what mattered most. Sometimes when you help someone else find what they've lost, you discover what you've been looking for too. 3 months later, Marcus received a package from Willowbrook. Inside was a photo of Emma's science fair project, a working model of a washing machine that she'd built with help from both her parents. The accompanying note was in Emma's careful 5-year-old handwriting. "Dear Mr. Marcus, thank you for fixing our family. Mommy says you taught her that the best things can't be bought, only built with love and time. I hope you and Sophia can visit soon. Love, Emma and Buddy." Marcus taped the photo to his workbench next to the picture of Sophia, smiling as he returned to his work. He had a refrigerator to repair for Mrs. Patterson, and Sophia would be home from school in a few hours, eager to help and tell him about her day. Some repairs he'd learned were worth more than any amount of money. They were worth everything.